Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barbalet. Today I'm going to explore a trip to the doctor. I had promised some aspect to this in the Stone Ape podcast, and I'm sure I'm going to get a completely different perspective on this with the opportunity to chat with Heron. But this situation was just so quizzical to me, and so Groundhog Day in the general way it appeared to me, that I had to reflect on it. It's interesting, actually, the nature of simulated reality versus completely randomized reality. And I ponder, if I'm a monkey in simulation, that these kind of experiences probably relate more heavily to something just to reflect upon and comment about. I've been having frequent migraines over the past month. The severity of them has ranged from a numbing, dulling headache that goes on for potentially days to very sharp and painful standard clinical migraines that basically shut me down. The difficulty through this period of time is that I haven't had the opportunity to take time off work. When these things occur, I'm moving at a snail's pace through technical, difficult problems that I normally would be able to deal with without this painful headache. I haven't maintained a general practitioner for many years, primarily because I really don't like the medical system. I think it's a combination of satirical and, makes claims from authority which it can never meaningfully work through. It is also fundamentally entrenched in a culture which ignores stress and ignores the physical effects on the body of trying to enact, getting amazing exponential growth and improving things which technically cannot humanly be improved upon by periodic and ongoing deterioration of quality of life. And as the medical establishment has no real answer to that, they're basically placating the system in which we exist, which I think continuously enacts a degrading quality of life on at least those of us that are partially or fully in this thing. And the times in which I've gone to the doctor, typically, I've never been greeted by individuals that actually think of me as a cognitive interactive form. So when I came to start a new relationship with a doctor, I did it through a basic search through my healthcare provider, ideally a doctor that was close to my office, and also ideally a doctor that had some degree of experience. I've historically gone to doctors on both extremes, fresh out of medical school and, 40 years of experience. And I don't know, I ebb and flow between these two things, but I thought for this particular case, I might go for a doctor that had slightly more experience. This may have been a bad judgment call on my part. What I found was a doctor that was very close to my work, who also had been practicing for 31 years. I turned up at his office with a heavy migraine, and really just spent most of my time with my eyes closed in the waiting room that had music piped over. One of the things I noticed first off was that there were very few people coming to see this doctor, and when I filled out my initial patient paperwork, I was asked by one of the receptionists if I had come from another doctor. And it was a name of the doctor that sounded familiar, but I realized that I wasn't this doctor's former patient. And I started to realize through this process that actually the doctor I was going to see probably didn't have that many patients. The first thing that caught me was when I was ushered into the, I don't know what you call it, the pre-medical interactive waiting room. And there was absolutely no technology in this area. There was no computer. Even the office furniture was from the late 60s at the latest. Some of the trash cans and the various medical things were clearly from the 1950s. The doctor came in. He was a gentleman probably in his 60s. I suspected he was a Vietnam veteran, as he had a poster up for the Wounded Warriors Foundation, and he had a particular kind of military drill in terms of the questions that he asked me, the way in which he corrected me, and you could see that he was someone who just had a very particular perspective. He drew blood from me, which you never see in the US associated with doctors, and I asked him actually as he was drawing blood that this was relatively unusual, and he said that he had been an ER doctor for a number of years. he could draw blood. He did it for his patients because, that was something he could do, and he didn't want his patients going out and having to get blood drawn elsewhere. Kind of felt by this period of time that I kind of was liking the guy. Kind of older doctor, typically not as knowledgeable in most current things, certainly was sufficiently gruff to kind of drill me down and get a very clear sense that the stuff that I was experiencing was of some degree of concern, and he certainly took what I was saying seriously. When I left, I realized that I had to slide my card in the old kind of paper transfer. He hand wrote his prescriptions, which became an interesting fact. And I realized that there was actually no computers in his facility. So when I came to put in the prescription and wait for the prescription to be filled, he had actually made up one of the drugs. One of the drugs wasn't a medical drug. And the pharmacist looked at it with some degree of concern. He pulled me over, gave me 2 out of 3 of the pills that I was supposed to be taking, and said that the final one just wasn't a drug. It wasn't something that he could get me for my prescription. He said that he'd called the doctor, and the doctor hadn't responded. And I realized that I didn't have any meaningful way of communicating with the doctor. My wife emails all her doctors. But instead, I had to just wait for this process to go through. I wondered actually whether this was a good thing or not. Whether finding this extremely eccentric elderly doctor that had no interest in new technology, but was able to get me in for an MRI relatively quickly, and certainly gave me medication that, when it was finally identified, seemed to provide a great degree of relief. I don't know what's going to occur going forwards. Obviously, I need to gather results and these kind of things, but it left me as a quizzical experience. In an environment where I am so technology-centered, and perhaps even the technology might be causal, associated with some aspects of what I was experiencing, I'm still in a wait-and-see mode with regards to this particular physician. I find it very strange that I found this gentleman, and just strange, again, that the experiences I had associated with my medical visit were as they appeared. But maybe this is a good thing. Who can tell? Until I get some form of diagnosis, all I have is the remarkably relaxing pills and some sense that, at least causally, these pills can affect and improve what has been a pretty brutal 4 weeks. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.